My name is Amelia. I'm 29 years old, and I never thought I'd be telling you this story. But here I am, sharing a day that turned my entire life upside down. You see, everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and marriage came crashing down in an instant. It was the day my husband, Mark, took his mistress to my beach farm. And the worst part? I was there too, with her husband, waiting. It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? I never imagined my life would lead to this. But let me take you back to where it all started. Mark and I had been married for 5 years. We met in college, and I thought we were perfect for each other. He was charming, successful, and we had big dreams for our future. We built a life together, and we even bought this beautiful, secluded beach farm on the coast. I thought it was the beginning of our forever. But as the years went on, I started feeling a distance between us. Mark had changed. His late nights at work became more frequent, and weekends were filled with excuses. I brushed it off. Maybe he was just stressed, I thought. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Mark had already left for work. I was making my coffee when I saw his phone light up on the counter. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen, and that's when it hit me. The message that would shatter everything. Can't wait for the weekend at the beach house. I've got the wine and that pink lace set ready for you. Counting the hours. I stood there, frozen, staring at the message. The name on the screen, Rachel. I didn't recognize it at first, but the words were enough. I had suspected something was wrong, but reading those words confirmed my worst fear. I couldn't breathe. I felt my world start to collapse around me. But I didn't react. Not yet. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me upset. I took a deep breath and pretended nothing was wrong. I went about my day like everything was normal, but in the back of my mind, I was planning my next move. I waited for Mark to come home that night. He walked in with his usual smile, oblivious to the storm that was brewing inside me. I acted like everything was fine. I kissed him on the cheek, but I felt nothing. Just an emptiness I couldn't ignore anymore. The weekend came, and Mark told me he was heading to the beach farm for some alone time. I knew he was meeting Rachel there. But here's the twist. I was already there. With her husband. You might think that sounds crazy, but trust me, I had a plan. I had to confront him, but I wasn't going to do it alone. I reached out to Rachel's husband, Jason. He was as in the dark as I was, but when I told him what I knew, he was just as furious as I was. He didn't want Rachel to get away with this either. So we both decided to show up at the beach farm that weekend and wait for them. But not just wait, confront them. I won't lie. My heart was pounding in my chest as we stood there, hiding behind the trees near the farmhouse. I could hear Mark's car pulling up, followed by Rachel's. Jason and I exchanged a look, knowing the storm that was about to unfold. I wanted to scream, I wanted to lash out. But instead I stood there, calm, collected, ready for the truth to come out. When Mark and Rachel walked through the door, their laughter stopped abruptly. They didn't expect us to be there. Jason spoke first, his voice cold but steady. So, this is the place where you two have been hiding your affair, huh? Mark froze, and I could see the color drain from his face. And Rachel, she turned pale, her eyes wide with shock. I could feel my blood boiling, but I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I just stared at Mark and Rachel, waiting for them to say something, anything. But the silence in the room was deafening. Finally, I spoke. So this is where it all ends, Mark. You really thought I wouldn't find out, that I wouldn't catch you in the act? I looked at Rachel, and for the first time, I saw something in her eyes that I wasn't expecting. Regret. But it didn't matter. The damage had already been done. The trust was gone, and I wasn't going to let them lie their way out of this. Jason stepped forward, his anger palpable. You think you can just walk into someone's life and tear it apart? Well, no more. The truth is here, and it's time for both of you to face it. The confrontation wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life, reclaiming my dignity. I didn't want to fight with Mark or Rachel. I wanted them to see the truth, to understand the pain they had caused, and then walk away. Because in that moment, I realized that the only thing I had to save was myself. The moment hung in the air, thick with tension. Jason and I stood there, side by side, facing Mark and Rachel. Mark was still frozen, unsure of how to respond. He looked at Rachel, then at me, but his eyes never seemed to meet mine. He knew what he had done. He knew the betrayal was out in the open, but there was nothing he could do to take it back. Rachel stood there, too, her expression shifting from shock to guilt. She kept glancing at Jason, but her eyes didn't meet mine. It was like she couldn't face me. She was the one who had helped tear my world apart, and yet all she could do was stare at the floor, barely able to look up. I don't know what I expected in that moment, but it wasn't this. I thought maybe Mark would apologize, or maybe Rachel would show some regret. But neither of them said a word. Instead, Mark just stood there, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. I wanted to scream. I wanted to accuse him of everything he had done to me. But I didn't. I kept my composure. Because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit before. Mark wasn't the person I thought he was. And Rachel? She wasn't the other woman. She was just a symptom of a much bigger problem. The problem was that I had trusted someone who didn't know how to value me. I took a deep breath and said, "You both think this is some kind of game, don't you? You think you can keep hiding in the shadows, pretending that nothing has happened. But here's the thing, I'm done pretending. You've hurt me, and you've hurt Jason, and now you have to face the consequences." Jason stepped forward, his anger no longer contained. He looked at Mark with disgust. "You've been playing us both, Mason," he said, his voice low and steady. "You think this is about some affair? No, it's about betrayal, disrespect, and lies, and now you have to own up to it." Mark finally looked up at me, his face red, his hands trembling. "I'm sorry," he muttered, the words coming out as nothing more than a whisper. But I didn't need to hear it. I didn't need an apology from someone who had already broken everything we had. I shook my head slowly, trying to keep the anger from rising again. "Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't erase the lies. Sorry doesn't heal the pain. And sorry doesn't bring back the trust you shattered. It's too late for that, Mark." In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about confronting them. It was about finally facing the truth. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for myself. I was fighting for my life, my dreams, and my dignity. And I wasn't going to let them destroy that. I turned to Jason, whose eyes were full of understanding. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He was with me in this, through all the pain, the betrayal, and now the clarity. Together, we were going to face this head on. I looked back at Mark and Rachel one last time. "I'm done," I said softly. "I'm done pretending everything's fine. I'm done trying to make this work when it's clear it never will. So, I'm leaving. And I'm not coming back. You can keep your lies, and you can keep your secrets. But I'm walking away." Jason gave me a nod, and together, we turned and walked out of the cabin. Behind us, the sound of shattered illusions echoed in the quiet space. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but for the first time, it wasn't from fear. It was from strength. I had made the hardest decision of my life, and I was walking away from the life I had once known to build a new one, a life where I was in control. As we drove away from the cabin, the cold air rushed through the windows, the silence between us comforting and reassuring. I didn't need to say anything. Jason knew. I knew. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the path to healing. As we drove away from the beach farm, I could feel my chest tighten with every mile we put between us. But it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from a sense of relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to hold everything together. I wasn't trying to make sense of the lies. I was letting go, and that felt like the first step toward my freedom. Jason and I didn't say much during the drive. He didn't need to ask me if I was okay. He knew. He knew because, just like him, I had been carrying this weight for so long. The weight of trust broken, the weight of betrayal that had slowly worn me down. And now, finally, the weight was lifting. We stopped at a quiet diner along the highway. It was a small place, with flickering neon lights and a simple menu. It felt like the world had slowed down, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about Mark or Rachel. I wasn't thinking about the hurt. I was just breathing. Jason ordered coffee for both of us, and we sat in a booth by the window. We didn't talk much at first, just sat there, looking out at the rain. But then something in me shifted. I had been pretending for so long, pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't, pretending that my life was perfect when deep down I knew it was falling apart. But now I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to play the role of the perfect wife, the perfect woman who could keep it all together. Because the truth was, I didn't have to. I wasn't just someone's wife anymore. I was Amelia, and that was enough. Jason's voice broke through my thoughts. You know, he said, sometimes the hardest thing to do is to walk away from something you thought you could fix. I nodded. I spent so long thinking I could fix everything. I thought if I tried harder, if I loved him more, maybe I could make things right. But I was wrong. I couldn't fix him. I couldn't fix us. Jason smiled, though it was bittersweet. And that's okay. The best thing you can do for yourself now is to walk away. It's not about them anymore. It's about you. It's about reclaiming your life. His words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I had been fighting for a relationship that wasn't even real anymore. For so long, I had been carrying someone else's mistakes on my shoulders. But now I was going to fight for myself. I wasn't just walking away from Mason, I was walking away from the pain, the lies, and the fear. We spent the rest of the afternoon driving, not to escape, but to move forward. There was no more running from the truth. The truth had already caught up with me, and now I was ready to face it head on. When we arrived at my new apartment, I couldn't help but look around. It wasn't much, just a small place in the city, but it was mine. It felt like a new beginning. I didn't have all the answers yet, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a choice. I wasn't trapped in a life I didn't want anymore. I could finally choose what was best for me. I sat down at my kitchen table, staring at the small stack of papers in front of me. The divorce petition was already signed. Everything was ready. And yet a part of me still wondered if I had made the right decision. What if I had made a mistake? What if I was too quick to walk away? But then I thought about the woman I used to be, the woman who thought she could make everything work no matter the cost. I thought about how far I had come, how much I had been through. I had spent years convincing myself that I wasn't enough, that I had to be everything to everyone. But I wasn't that person anymore. I didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to make it work. I needed to make it right for me. And that's when I realized I wasn't just walking away from Mason. I was walking toward the life I had always wanted. A life where I could finally breathe, where I could make my own decisions and be true to myself. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't just someone's wife. I was Amelia, and that was enough. The next few weeks were hard, there's no denying it. There were days when I questioned my decision, when I wondered if I had done the right thing. But each time, I reminded myself of the truth. I reminded myself of that day at the beach farm, when I had confronted the lies head on, when I had chosen my own peace over everything else. And with each passing day, I grew stronger. The weight lifted a little more, and I found myself again. I started seeing a therapist, working through the emotions I had buried for so long. I didn't let the hurt define me. I took control of my own story. One day, out of the blue, I received a text from Mason. He asked if we could talk. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to tell him that it was too late, that nothing he could say would change anything. But I took a deep breath and decided to meet him. It wasn't for him. It wasn't to fix things. It was to close that chapter of my life once and for all. We met at a quiet cafe in the city, and Mason, for the first time in months, looked different. He was thinner, quieter, almost broken. He apologized, of course, but this time I didn't need his apology. I didn't need him to make it right. I had already done that for myself. I told him that I had moved on, that I had learned to love myself first. I didn't need his validation anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. I had finally found peace, and that was more than enough for me. After I walked away from Mason that day at the cafe, I felt a strange kind of calm. It was as if I had finally closed a chapter that had been dragging me down for years. I didn't need to look back anymore. I didn't need to worry about what Mason thought of me or what anyone else thought of my decisions. For the first time in years, I was free. But freedom wasn't as simple as it sounded. There were moments, especially in the quiet of the evening when the house was empty, when I wondered if I had made the right decision. What if I had been too hasty? What if I had thrown away a life that could have still worked? But every time that doubt crept in, I reminded myself of the truth I had learned over the last few months. The truth was that I had been living in a relationship that wasn't real. I had been holding on to a marriage that was built on lies, and I wasn't going to let that keep me in a place of fear and uncertainty. I wasn't just leaving Mason. I was leaving behind the woman I thought I had to be for him. I was walking into a new version of myself, one who no longer apologized for wanting more. And that's when the phone call came. It was a week after my meeting with Mason, and I had just returned home from the gym. I was sitting on the couch, sipping water, when the phone rang. I looked at the screen and my heart skipped a beat. It was Tyler. I hadn't heard from him in a while, and I had been wondering how he and Claire were doing. I didn't expect to hear from him, especially not after everything that had happened. But I answered the call anyway. "Hello?" I said, my voice a little more tentative than I wanted it to sound. "Hey, Harper." Tyler's voice was warm, but there was a hint of something underneath it. Something familiar, like we had both been through something that tied us together. "I just wanted to check in on you, see how you're doing." I paused for a moment, surprised by how much I wanted to hear from him. It wasn't that I was expecting anything from him, but I knew he understood what I had gone through. He knew the pain, the betrayal, the confusion, and maybe, just maybe, he understood what it was like to start over. "I'm okay," I replied, even though I wasn't sure if I truly was. "I'm getting there. It's not easy, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again." Tyler's voice softened, like he understood exactly what I was saying. "You're strong, Harper. You don't give yourself enough credit. But I get it. I really do." There was a brief silence before I spoke again. "Tyler, I've been thinking about everything that happened, about what we did. I don't know if we did it the right way, but I know it was what I needed." He didn't respond right away, but I didn't need him to. I knew he understood. It was like we were both in the same place, both rebuilding our lives after everything had fallen apart. We didn't need to apologize for the truth anymore. We had both done the hardest thing we could do, confronted the lies, the betrayal, and the secrets. And now we were moving forward. "You don't have to worry about anything," he said, finally breaking the silence. "I'm here if you need to talk, if you need someone to listen. You're not alone in this, Harper." His words meant more than I realized. For so long, I had convinced myself that I had to go through everything alone, that it was just me against the world. But hearing Tyler's voice, hearing him offer his support without hesitation, made me realize how much I had been missing. We ended the call after a few more minutes of conversation. It wasn't anything extraordinary. We didn't make promises to meet up or talk every day. But in that brief moment, I felt like I had finally found someone who understood, someone who had walked the same painful road I had and was ready to walk beside me, not as someone trying to fix things, but as a friend. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I focused on work, on my new life, and on myself. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Mason. I wasn't thinking about the lies or the betrayals. I was simply living my life, and it felt good. There were still moments when the memories would flood back, when the hurt would surface, but each time I pushed them away. I reminded myself that I had made the right choice. I reminded myself that I was worthy of love, of respect, and of happiness. I didn't need anyone else's validation to feel complete. I was complete on my own. Then one afternoon, a few months after the divorce was final, I got a text from Jason. I hadn't seen him in a while, but we had kept in touch. He was still in the same city, living his life, and I was living mine. The message was simple. "You've been doing great, Harper. I'm proud of you." I smiled at the message. He didn't know it, but those few words meant everything to me. They reminded me that I had made it. I had made it through the darkest days of my life, and I had come out stronger on the other side. As I looked out at the ocean that day, I realized that everything I had gone through, the betrayal, the pain, the heartbreak, had been the beginning of something new, something better. I wasn't looking for love anymore. I wasn't looking for validation. I was looking for peace, for my own happiness. And for the first time, I had found it. A few months later, I was sitting in my new apartment in downtown Seattle. It wasn't anything extravagant, but it was mine. I didn't have to share it with anyone, and it was the first time in a long time I felt at peace in my own space. The windows faced the street, and I could hear the city buzzing below. But for me, it felt calm, like the calm after a storm. It was quiet, and I could finally hear myself again. One evening, as I was sitting on my couch, enjoying a cup of tea, my phone buzzed. It was an email. I opened it without thinking too much. Just another newsletter or work-related update, or so I thought. But as soon as I saw the sender's name, my heart skipped a beat. It was from Mason. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a while, wondering what he possibly could want. What could he say after everything that had happened? After everything he had done? I didn't know if I was ready for whatever he had to say, but part of me knew I would have to hear him out. So I opened it. The message was brief, but the words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Harper, I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know that I am sorry. I never meant for it to end this way. I miss you, and I hope one day we can talk. Just talk, no pressure. Please call me when you're ready." I closed my eyes, letting the weight of his words settle over me. It felt like a lifetime ago that we had shared our lives together. The man who once promised me everything now seemed like a shadow of the person I had loved. But what hit me the hardest was the realization that even after all this time, he still didn't fully understand the consequences of his actions. I didn't know what to do with that email. Part of me wanted to reply, to yell at him, to remind him of everything he had done. But the other part of me, the part that had grown stronger, knew that this was my chance to let go once and for all. I had learned that I didn't need to relive the past to move forward. I had to make peace with it and let it go. I sat for a while, thinking. Finally, I deleted the email. No reply, no anger, just silence. The past was behind me, and I was no longer going to allow his mistakes to dictate my future. The pain was still there, but it wasn't consuming me anymore. I had faced the truth. I had faced him. And now, I was choosing peace. The next few weeks were full of changes. I worked on myself, my health, my career, my sense of self. I focused on the things I loved, the things that made me feel alive. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years, went to yoga classes, and spent weekends hiking in the mountains. I was rediscovering parts of myself that I had long buried. I was learning that I didn't need anyone else to feel complete. One afternoon, as I was hiking along a trail, I received another message, this time from Tyler. It was a simple text, just checking in. "Hey Harper, hope you're doing well. Just wanted to say hi." I smiled at the message. It had been a while since we had spoken, and I appreciated the genuine concern. Tyler had been a quiet strength through all of this, a reminder that good people still existed. I texted him back, telling him I was doing well, and we ended up chatting for a bit. We didn't talk much about the past, just a few casual messages about life and what was happening. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that I was okay. I was more than okay. I was healing, and I was moving forward. A few weeks later, I found myself back at the cabin, the one where so much had happened. But this time, it wasn't filled with anger or betrayal. It was just me, sitting by the lake, watching the sun set behind the trees. There was something peaceful about it now, something that felt like a new beginning. It was no longer just a place of memories. It was a place where I could breathe again, where I could create new memories for myself. It was during that trip that I realized something. The life I had been living was not the life I was meant to have. The life I was supposed to have was one that was full of love, not from others, but from myself. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew that I was finally free from everything that had been holding me back. The next chapter was mine to write. I didn't need to keep looking back at the life I had lost. I could move forward and make the future I wanted. And that future, I realized, was one I could create on my own terms. No one else had the power to define me. Not Mason, not Claire. No one. Days passed, and I found myself gradually embracing this new life. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I didn't wake up every day feeling like a piece of me was missing. I woke up with a sense of hope and strength, and for the first time in a long time, I was proud of who I was becoming. Then, one evening, I received an unexpected phone call. It was from my lawyer. She said, "Amelia, we've received Mason's response. He's ready to sign the divorce papers. He wants to make it official." I was caught off guard. I had assumed he'd try to fight it, but instead it seemed like he was just ready to let go, to let everything end. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, as the reality of it all started to sink in. This wasn't the closure I had imagined. There were no dramatic speeches, no tearful apologies, just a cold final step. Mason was done, and so was I. We were both moving on, but in different directions. I had spent so much time wondering why this had happened, why he had done it. But now I realized something. It didn't matter. I didn't need to know why he had hurt me or why he chose to betray me. The truth was, his actions had already answered all the questions for me. And that's when I truly understood that closure doesn't always come with a grand finale. Sometimes it just comes when you decide to walk away. The next week, I signed the final papers. No more waiting, no more wondering, just a clean break. I felt a sense of weight lifting off my shoulders. Not because I was free from Mason, but because I was free from holding on to something that wasn't meant for me anymore. I still remember the day I moved into my new apartment. It was a small place, not too far from the city center, but far enough that I could find peace. I spent that day unpacking boxes and decorating the space to make it feel like home. I hung up photos of my friends, of trips I had taken alone, and even some I had taken when I was with Mason, before everything changed. The walls felt like a fresh start, a place where I could finally breathe, where I could just be myself without worrying about anyone else. As I stood in the middle of my new living room that evening, I realized that I had come a long way. I had survived what was supposed to break me. I had found strength in myself, even when it felt like the world was falling apart. And now, I was choosing to move forward, choosing to build a life that was mine, a life filled with new possibilities. It wasn't long after that when I ran into Tyler again. It was purely by chance at a mutual friend's party. I hadn't seen him since that day at the cabin, and honestly, I wasn't sure how I'd feel seeing him again. But when I walked in, there he was, standing near the snack table, looking as calm and steady as he always had. He looked at me when I entered, gave me a smile, and waved me over. We started talking, and it felt normal, comfortable. There was no tension, no awkwardness. We just talked, catching up about life, about work, about our mutual friends. It was the first time in a long time that I didn't feel the weight of my past. I wasn't thinking about Mason, about Claire, or even the cabin. I was just living in the moment. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. Over the next few weeks, Tyler and I talked more. We shared more moments like that first encounter at the party, casual conversations about life and what we had been through. But something felt different this time. It wasn't like before. I wasn't looking for anything from him, and he wasn't looking for anything from me. It was simply two people who had experienced pain, who had found a way to heal together, without expectations. I began to realize that my healing wasn't tied to Mason's actions or to what had happened between Tyler and Claire. It wasn't about getting revenge or proving something to anyone. It was about learning to live for myself, to heal on my own terms. And I was doing that. I was truly moving on, finding peace in every step forward. As the months passed, I focused on my career and started taking on new projects I'd always wanted to explore. I found joy in the little things, morning walks in the park, reading books I hadn't had time for, and even picking up new hobbies. I realized that there was so much of life I had missed while I was wrapped up in a relationship that no longer served me. Then one afternoon, while I was out on a walk, I received a message from my lawyer. She had the final word from Mason. The divorce was officially finalized, and everything had been settled. I didn't feel relief or anger. I just felt nothing. The finality of it all wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a huge moment. It was just the end of a chapter that had already been closed long ago. That evening, I went out for dinner with friends, laughing and chatting like I hadn't in a long time. It was in that moment I realized how far I had come. The pain, the hurt, the loss, they were still there, but they no longer controlled me. I was in control of my life now. I was living for me, and that was enough. As the weeks went by, I started to find my rhythm again. I wasn't rushing into anything, not relationships, not work, not life. I took my time, doing things that made me happy, focusing on what really mattered. The more I did this, the more I realized how much I had been holding on to for the wrong reasons. For years, I'd been living a life that wasn't fully mine, trying to make a marriage work when I knew deep down it was already over. I remember one afternoon I was sitting in the park, watching kids play and families laughing, and I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me. I realized that I hadn't felt this calm in years. Sure, there were moments when I thought about Mason, but they didn't consume me anymore. The anger and resentment had faded. I wasn't angry at him. I wasn't angry at Claire. I was angry at myself for allowing myself to be so blind for so long. But I had learned from it, and that was enough. One day, while I was out with a friend, I received a message from Tyler. It was short and simple. "Are you free tomorrow for coffee?" It was unexpected, but not unwelcome. I agreed, not really thinking too much about it. The next day, we met up at a small cafe, and as soon as I sat down, I could tell something was different. He looked at me like he wanted to say something, but he was holding back. I looked at him and smiled. "What's going on, Tyler?" I asked, not trying to pressure him, just genuinely curious. He hesitated for a moment, then spoke softly. "I've been thinking a lot lately, about everything that happened. And, well, I wanted to ask you something. Are you okay? Really okay?" I couldn't help but laugh lightly. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed someone to ask me that question. Really ask. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's been a journey, but I'm okay. Better than I ever expected, actually." And for the first time, I said it and meant it. I was okay. I had come so far, from the heartbreak, from the betrayal, from the fear of starting over. I was better for it. Tyler's expression softened. He gave me a small, understanding smile. "You're stronger than you know, Amelia. I'm proud of you." He said it like he meant it. And in that moment, I realized I was proud of myself too. I hadn't just survived what had happened. I had learned from it. I had healed. And I was finally finding the courage to move forward, fully and without regret. That afternoon, we talked about our lives, our hopes, and what the future might hold. We didn't talk about Mason or Claire. We didn't need to. We just talked about where we were now and where we were headed. It wasn't about finding new love. It wasn't about the past. It was about the now. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't just walking through life. I was living it. I was fully in the moment. A few months later, I started a new project that had always been in the back of my mind. I'd always wanted to create a financial counseling service for people going through difficult life changes, especially for women going through divorces or breakups. It felt so good to finally put my energy into something that could truly help others. The idea had been there for years, but I had never been brave enough to act on it. Now it felt like the perfect time. It felt right. As I poured my energy into this new venture, I realized something even bigger. I wasn't just rebuilding my career. I was rebuilding myself. I had learned how to trust myself again, how to stand on my own feet without needing someone else's approval or validation. I had learned that the only person I needed to make proud was myself. I had learned that I was enough, exactly as I was. As the year passed, my business started to grow. Slowly, at first, but steadily. More women came to me for advice, for guidance. Some were just starting over. Others had been in their marriages for decades. But the one thing they all had in common was a need for reassurance that they could do it, that they could make it through their toughest times and come out stronger. And I was there to show them that they could. It wasn't easy, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that's what mattered most. Every day, I woke up and reminded myself that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, and every night, I went to bed knowing that I was one step closer to the life I had dreamed of. A life of freedom, independence, and happiness. A life that I had fought for and finally earned. Then, one day, I received a call from Tyler. His voice was softer than usual, and I could tell something had changed. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for everything, for helping me find clarity in all of this. I know you didn't have to, but you did, and I'm grateful for it." I didn't need to say much. I just smiled to myself and replied, "You don't need to thank me. We both helped each other." That night, I sat in my new apartment, staring out at the city lights. Everything was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. I had rebuilt my life from the ground up, and I was finally living it on my own terms. I had faced the truth, confronted the people who had hurt me, and walked away from a marriage that no longer served me. I had chosen myself, and in doing so, I had found my strength. And as I looked out at the lights, I couldn't help but think back to the woman I had been just a year ago. I never would have imagined I would be here, living this life. But here I was, and I knew now that there was nothing I couldn't overcome. I had learned how to stand tall, even when the world tried to knock me down. I had learned to trust myself again, and most importantly, I had learned that the only person who could truly make me whole was me. The more I focused on my new path, the more I realized how far I had come. I was no longer defined by the mistakes of my past. My heart no longer carried the weight of Mason's betrayal. The anger that once lived within me had faded, replaced by something much stronger: peace. It was strange at first, feeling this calm. I didn't know how to embrace it, but I knew it was something I had earned. Every morning, I took a moment to reflect, to remember how far I'd come. And every night, I went to bed with a sense of fulfillment. I was no longer living in the shadows of what I had lost. Instead, I was embracing what I had gained. It wasn't about revenge or bitterness anymore. It was about freedom. Freedom to be me, to make my own decisions, and to create a future that was truly mine. But as much as I had grown, the past still had a way of sneaking up on me. I had moments where the memories of Mason and Claire's betrayal came rushing back, like a flood I couldn't control. But I had learned not to let those moments define me. I had learned how to navigate them with grace. I had learned to breathe through the pain and then let it go. There were days, though, when I found myself wondering about them. What was Claire thinking now? What was Mason feeling? Were they happy with the life they had built? Or was it all a lie, like our marriage had been? I used to obsess over these questions, but now I had learned to stop. Because in the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was how I was living my life now. Then one afternoon, out of the blue, I received a message from Mason. My phone buzzed, and when I saw his name, I froze. My heart raced, but I didn't feel the usual anger. I felt something different. Curiosity. What did he want now? I hesitated, unsure if I should open it, but I did anyway. The message was short. "I know you've moved on, but I just want you to know how sorry I am. I regret everything. I hope you're doing well." I stared at the screen for a few moments. There was a time when these words would have cut deep, when his apologies would have left me feeling lost and confused. But now they didn't do anything for me. I wasn't looking for an apology. I wasn't looking for closure from him. I had already found it in myself. I had already moved on. I typed a response, but instead of pouring my heart into it like I used to, I simply said, "I'm fine. Thank you for reaching out, but I'm living my life now. I've let go." I hit send and put my phone down, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. In the days that followed, Mason continued to send occasional messages, but each time I became less and less interested. I didn't need to rehash the past with him anymore. I didn't need him in my life to feel complete. I had learned to rely on myself, to trust my own strength, and I wasn't going to give that up. Meanwhile, Tyler reached out from time to time as well. Not with anything romantic, but just to check in. We had both been through a lot, and in some strange way, I felt like we understood each other better than anyone else ever could. We weren't just sharing a painful experience anymore. We were healing together in our own ways. There were no expectations, no pressure, just two people who had seen the worst and come out the other side stronger for it. As I moved forward, I realized that the real healing didn't come from fixing what had been broken. It came from accepting that some things can't be fixed. Some things are meant to fall apart so that something better can take its place. And the person I had become after everything fell apart was the person I had always needed to be. I began to notice the small things, the way I smiled at strangers in the grocery store, the way I looked forward to my morning coffee, the way I started making plans for the future without wondering if anyone else would be in it. These were things I had taken for granted before, but now they felt like precious moments, like victories. I wasn't just existing anymore. I was living. One day, I realized that I had everything I needed within myself. I didn't need anyone to complete me. I didn't need validation or love from someone who had taken so much from me. I had learned how to love myself again. I had learned how to stand tall, even when the world tried to break me down. And in that moment, I knew that I was finally whole. And with that, my new life truly began. A life that was mine, without anyone's influence, without anyone's expectations. A life where I could choose what I wanted, who I wanted, and how I wanted to live it. As for Mason and Claire, they were a part of my past, not my present or my future. I had closed that chapter long ago, and now I was writing my own story, one that would be filled with peace, growth, and the kind of love I deserved. The kind of love that started with me. It's funny, I continued, how you don't realize what you're capable of until you're pushed to the edge. I used to think that love meant sacrificing everything for the person you were with. I thought it meant giving up your dreams, your happiness, your peace, just to make them happy. But I've learned that love doesn't work that way. Love is not about self-sacrifice. It's about mutual respect, trust, and growth. It's about two people supporting each other, not tearing each other down. And the moment I realized that, everything changed for me. I stopped chasing after the love that didn't belong to me anymore. Instead, I started chasing the love I'd neglected for so long, the love for myself. I don't know what Mason and Claire's future holds. I don't know if they'll stay together or if they'll ever find the truth they're both running from. But that's not my problem anymore. They're free to figure it out, just like I had to. I had to let go of the idea that I could control everything or that their happiness depended on me. What mattered now was my happiness, and I was finally ready to embrace it. I've learned to stop asking myself, what if? What if I had done something differently? What if I had been more patient? What if I had seen the signs earlier? Those questions don't matter anymore. What matters is who I am today. The woman who walked away from all the lies and found herself again. The woman who's learning to trust her heart again, to take risks, and to build a life that's all hers. So I stand here today, stronger, wiser, and free. I no longer feel like a victim. I feel like a survivor. And more than that, I feel like someone who has finally learned the most important lesson of all, that sometimes you have to lose yourself to find your true worth. I no longer wait for apologies. I no longer wait for closure, because I've given myself all that I need. I am enough, and that is all I ever needed to know. If you've been through something similar, or if this story resonated with you, I want to hear your thoughts. How did you find your strength after betrayal? Share your experience in the comments below, and if you want to hear more stories like mine, stories of personal growth, strength, and healing, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next.